Hello, everyone. This is Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspire Show. And my guest today is Ashta-deb. Ashta has the ability to feel what you cannot put into words, your positive, negative, and intuitive vibrations. Every word is merely a frequency of energy producing a vibration, she says. The energy combined with vibration gives us emotion. The Latin derivative for the word emotion, emotere, literally means energy in motion. Ashta-deb founded and developed Ashta Chaitanya for those who are tormented by mental agony. She's a registered hypnotherapist and an intuitive empath healer. She is accredited by the National Guild of Hypnotists and is a long-standing member. In her early years as an empath healer, she cultivated her Reiki skills, becoming a Reiki Master in 2006. Ashta-deb's extensive travels took her to India, where she learned firsthand from her guru the art of Kriya Yoga and Meditation. She experimented with many different techniques, and with the curiosity and adventurous soul of a child, wisdom continues to descend upon her. The combination of hypnosis, Kriya Yoga and meditation, and Ashta's empath skills are truly unique. Her ability to apply these science formulas to healing is indescribable. Ashta-deb is the author of the book, Life Happens to Us. Ashta, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Before we start, please show us your book.
Oh, thank you. Here's my book, Life Happens to Us. It's on Amazon, and on my website, there's some links to it. I hope it's an inspiring book. I was told that it's very inspiring. So I look forward to seeing some more reviews on that.
Yes, I read it, and I really enjoy it. And I'll start by mentioning that you're born in Guyana, you lived in Toronto, and your childhood was quite traumatizing due to family issues, not only between your parents, but between your uncles and aunties on both sides of the family. You felt uprooted from both countries, and it took you a long time to reassess of who you really are. All this left a deep scar on your mental health. How did you overcome it?
We actually moved. We were in Guyana, then moved to Canada when I was 3, then came back to Guyana, and all this tragedy happened. So when I came back to Canada, I did what everybody does. You go to a psychologist, then you escalate it to a psychiatrist. And the day I broke down in the psychiatrist's office, and he looked at his watch and he told me time was up. I knew that Western therapy, there was a coldness there that obviously people with trauma needed much more warmth, much more connection. And then I started experimenting with yoga and meditation, because my grandfather used to do a lot of yoga and meditation, and many of my uncles. And I remember growing up and actually laughing at my uncle when they did yoga, because they never forced us to do it. It was just sort of like a part of life. So yeah, when I realized Western therapy was not going to do anything for me, I suffered greatly after that, and until I did find the yoga. And then I realized that what was missing in Western therapy, and what yoga, the yogic science. Now, I'm not talking yoga, the postures. I'm talking the true pranayama, the mental health part of yogic science, so that when you understand how your body operates from a science perspective, because we have a lot of logic today in this world, then you can understand why these thoughts come, how to slow them down, how to be thoughtless. Because sometimes you can't just tell a person be thoughtless and this is the spiritual path. Because some people today, because of the internet and having that instant answers all the time, that logic, they want to have some substance to hold on to. And Kriya Yoga was actually, I would say, if you're having any mental agony, that is the yoga. That is an accelerated yoga, I would say. The hot yoga is very nice. You can do lots of postures, very pretty. But if you do not incorporate that mental part, the hot yoga becomes the spiritual ego, the arrogance. And I see much of it on the internet, just by looking at pictures. You see, So yoga has been taken very much out of context now anyway. And what I can say for people to understand, this word yoga, it means union. So we're not practicing union. You cannot practice a union. You practice the technique, and then when you do so with awareness, then that union naturally takes place. And when that union takes place, you cannot even describe it. It is the coming together of two opposites. And this is what causes huge suffering because we tend to run from our opposite.
Yes.
So
And we'll go
I'm
deeper
very
into,
passionate about this. So tell me when you need to cut it.
yeah, we'll go deeper into Kriya Yoga, because I'm a devotee and a practitioner of Kriya Yoga. So we'll go deeper a little bit later. But staying on the topic of mental health, it's a rampant condition affecting everyone, no matter the gender,
Yes,
the age bracket, there is no boundaries.
right.
How do you see reverting this alarming trend?
Well, first of all, we have to, as a people, and I really hope this gets out well, because we have to put a stop to marketing. I agree you market your product, but we have a marketing that directly hits on our mental state, which tells us we are not good enough and we have to be happy all the time. And actually, depression would cease to exist if society would stop perpetrating that we have to be happy all the time. Because the moment people wake up in the morning now, they have this expectation of how their day is supposed to go, as opposed to how it should unravel, about embracing it. So at anything that's up has to come down, regardless. You go up, you come down. When you breathe in, up and down, the breath is going up and down. So until you're comfortable with that up and down, then, and you have to embrace that up and down, you have to see that opposite, else depression will continue to exist. Because alarmingly so, I'm in Grenada right now, and one of the things that's alarming to me is we have a lot of life coaches, and even in Toronto when I left as well, a lot of life coaches, and they keep hammering to people, eat healthy, look good, you have to feel good, you have to have a smile on your face, wake up with a positive affirmation. But at the end of the day, even the light that's around me here, it takes positive and negative to give you that light. And until we can accept the opposite, we are not going anywhere. Your spiritual practice will remain as an imagination disease. And I cannot tell you how many people now are in this imagination disease. I hear some crazy stories sometimes. Some people, they see blue lights, red lights, they're flying in the air, blah, blah, blah. But it's very easy to catch when it's imagination disease. Because when you have a true divine experience, it is actually speechless. It's wordless. You actually sit in awe and you don't want to even tell anybody, because you stir with it and you sit with it and you're like, I don't even know if this is real or not. But the person who's rushing out in this excitedness to be what society is telling us we have to be. And this starts with marketing, because marketing, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I had read this years ago that Charles Darwin's nephew, one of the ways women started smoking was that he actually told the cigarette companies that he could sell feelings. He could sell people feelings, and everybody thought he was an idiot. Just like when we laughed when you said we could sell water. I remember laughing at someone when they said, "Oh, we can bottle water and sell it." And I said, "Crazy! Who would buy water when you get it from the tap?" So the same thing, he said he could sell feelings. And what he did during the Women's Lib movement was to hire some models and position them strategically in the crowd. And that's how women started smoking. And then from then, we see all the ads. I mean, you look at someone, use this cream, and your skin will be looking prettier and it will make you feel. Notice all the ads now always have this underlying implying that it will make you feel a certain way. So now when we are constantly hypnotizing people into this, because marketing is a hypnosis, it is a definite hypnosis. So when we are hypnotizing people into this, now Now we're angry and we're upset because now people are depressed, they're committing suicide, they don't know what's wrong with them because they're feeling this push-pull all the time within them. We're caught up in a vicious cycle with this marketing. And I think governments actually, there should be some rule that when you market something, you should not be going into the psyche of the person, because I think that's a gross invasion of privacy. To actually tap into a person's psyche to market something to them, it's just not right. It's just not right. On top of which, we have our childhood programming from, you know, our beliefs, what we believe and don't believe. So it's so much all in one in a human. So now what I'm telling people now, take a deep breath. And you know what? Maybe you don't need to be, gluten free, and you don't, this pressure on ourselves on food. You can actually go into your kitchen, and if you tune in to your body, you will know what your body wants. Your body is so intelligent. When women are pregnant, we don't sit and make a whole list saying, oh, make a placenta, make the umbilical cord. The body is so intelligent and knows what to do. But we as a human population now are acting as if our body is stupid. We're literally doing to our body instead of listening to what the body actually needs. And right off this depression, we have to let go of this expectation of how we are supposed to feel, and embrace how we're actually feeling. If you're feeling sad, yes, damn it, you're sad, cry. If you're feeling angry, it's an emotion. It's there, it's energy in motion. And we have to accept, we have this, they had this quote that used to go around that comparisons divide, similarities unite. Well, I actually think it's another way. It's acceptance of comparisons unite, and comfort and similarities divide.
Yes.
Because in
Yeah.
reality, when we get comfort in our similarities, then you see the politics we see going on now. So we really have to have an acceptance of what this comparison, acceptance of comparison.
Yeah, and when you talk about the intelligence of the body, that's true. But at the same time, we don't know how to read that intelligence. Our intuition is not there because we didn't cultivate it. And cultivation of intuition comes through, taking care of ourselves, or working on ourselves, fine-tuning our senses. So that's lost just because, the outside senses and stimuli are much more important than the internal ones.
Well, I have good news for you. Your intuition is never lost. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna actually said, I reside in the gut. Those gut feelings are never lost. Those gut feelings is what you don't want to hear, but it's not lost. And mothers especially, I mean, when I was, my kids were younger, you just have that feeling and you say something's wrong and you have to go check your child. Now what we have is people have the feeling, but what do? They second guess it because they don't trust themselves. Because even our parenting, the way we're being parented is like right now, we have a lot of parents that occupy their children's time, literally occupy their children's time. So the children are busy, busy, busy. So when this child is so busy and the parent is so busy, they don't, the gut feeling is there, but they haven't actually says, oh, here, I got this gut feeling. Because when they have a gut feeling now, they, was that right? Should I do that? Da, 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 da. Whereas a gut feeling means you act. Being in present moment means you act in the moment. And we're acting too much based on our past. Our past is coming into our present, and we are making decisions in the present on past experiences instead of looking at the experience today. So the intuitive nature, that is your nature. Look at the word human being. The ego is the human part of the being, the human part of the being. So there's the being, that intuitive nature cannot leave you. It is the being, it's there regardless. But it's up to you if you want to use it or not. Because, in the olden days, back in my day, we used to say, oh, I have a gut feeling about something. right? Now people say, oh, the internet told me. I saw it on this website or something, you know. So the gut feeling is very, very well there. And actually with Kriya Yoga, when you breathe in and you breathe out and you actually focus on that breath, you can feel, just observing the body, how your own breath is flowing. Because when I teach Kriya, I actually don't even jump into Kriya. I tell people first, observe, tell me how you're breathing. Tell me what you're seeing in your body, what you're feeling in your body. Because that when you observe it, then you're able to see, oh my gosh, I'm actually not even breathing. I'm catching it in my throat and pushing it back out. So when you actually breathe in Kriya Yoga, and actually just breathing in general, if you can just breathe deep, let your belly expand, let your belly contract back, then immediately you will feel there's an energy there that you will feel within your gut that already starts to stir. I had a gentleman here the other day. He had never done any Kriya, never done any breathing. And all I said to him was, I put my hand in his tummy and I said, all I want to see is your tummy going as far as it is can and go back in. And only by doing that 3 times in that moment, he immediately felt a stillness. What was that? That was his nature, his intuitive nature. He touched, you know, and we have to be the ones to want to embrace that intuitive nature instead of doubting ourselves. You know, Krishna said, a man in doubt is the worst place to be. Just take a side and it will lead you somewhere. Because we're all going to end up in the place anyway. But don't be a man in doubt. And I highly recommend everyone listen to that intuitive nature. And we know it's intuitive nature when it comes from the gut. You will not feel it in your eyelashes. You will not feel it flying and, you know, you're levitating off the floor. It will be in the gut. If you're feeling it in the heart and the head, then you're off into some fantasy. But you will feel it in the gut. And that gut feeling is I like to say it's a feeling of wisdom. It is a droplet of wisdom that when that wisdom descends upon you, there is so much in that picture that in fact, when I've had this happen to me, I can't even begin to even say everything I see. Sometimes it's actually quite lonely because you can't share everything. Yes. And we're brought up to share. And there comes a time on the spiritual path where you're like in no man's land. You know, that's I think.
Yes, you're right. At the beginning of the interview, you mentioned your grandfather William, and I know you were quite young when
his name was James.
James. Okay, you witnessed some of his meditation and the results of what he could do, the powers he had. Can you share some of those with us, please?
Well, he could actually heal people. And I'm going to give you my experience with him. Once my stomach was really paining me. And I went to him and I used to call him Daddy. And I said, Daddy, my stomach is really hurting me. And he said, okay, come lie down on the floor. And I just lay on the floor and he took my hand this way, crack, crack. And then suddenly he said a prayer. And after he said the prayer, he blew like the prana 3 times on my head. And he says, okay, get up now. And do you know, I got up and there was not a stitch of pain and my stomach didn't hurt me for about 2 years after, 3 years after. I never had a stomach issue. Same thing with babies in the neighborhood. The mothers would bring them because they can't drink their milk. And we would say they got the evil eye. And they would hold the baby in their hand. And my grandfather would just say this prayer and the prana again. And believe you me, that child would start drinking that milk. Just drinking it. And this is where, even when we talk about Reiki and these energy healings, one of the things we're having now is because people, we're having, you know, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. So we're having people who are sick doing Reiki on the sick. You see? So this is why we have a world that is so in confusion. Like I think I said to you or someone, I said, with the amount of yoga that's being done today, we should have had more enlightened people. So we have to stop and ask why that's not happening. Why don't we have more enlightened people? Because it's not about the posture, it's the breath,
Yeah, it's not the asanas.
perfecting the
Yeah.
breath.
It's the,
Perfect the breath, not the posture. When you perfect that breath, you would be surprised the posture comes. It will naturally come when you perfect the breath.
how
So
did
yes.
about choosing Kriya Yoga and your guru? What attracted you to Kriya?
Well, I wasn't attracted to Korea at first, but I was doing a lot of hot yoga, but I think because of my family background, because my mom's side were all Brahmins and they were pandits and they would do the bhakti yoga. My grandfather and some of my uncles, they were more the Gyan yoga, which is the knowledge, So everybody sort of took part in this bhakti, but you sort of had this separation. So the with my grandfather, he did the Kriya, and at the time I didn't know he was doing Kriya. So when I went to India, I was in my prayer room in Canada. I had a prayer room in my room, and I said, God, I feel like this is it. You want this? I feel like India's coming. I said, who am I going to? And that day, I opened my laptop, and this fellow's name came up. And for some reason, I had seen him before in meditation, so I knew. But when I went there, he was a tough Kriya teacher. Oh my God. And I said, I don't like this Kriya because he taught me what are not in the books. And even some ways, to hold. And there was one I wrote in my book where there was this Kriya move. And he says, hold your breath. And I held the breath and we were very challenging. And he said, the next thing I knew, I opened my eyes and everybody was crying. And I go, what's happening? They said, we thought you died. Because I held the breath and he think, but I tell you, um, I've seen people do Kriya where they can come back and says, oh, that's madness. But if you really take that opportunity to experiment with this body and this mind, you would be surprised because that little incident as it was, I saw great things after. It was opening because this fear of death. A lot of people, even with COVID now, I say, what are people afraid of? Are they afraid of the pain of getting it? Are they afraid of getting it? Or are they afraid of death? Because I laugh because I think we go to church and we're praying, we can't wait to go to the Lord. And then when the time comes, we're all shitting in our pants because we don't want to go. So this fear, it's coming to this. And Father De Mello, actually, he was a Jesuit priest. He said there's two things in this world, love and fear. And I actually agree with this because it's the fear that actually stops us in our roots us. It's our fear.
And
So
sometimes it's even the fear of what you experience, that samadhi, moment where you didn't breathe, you were somewhere else.
yes,
The
yes.
same way as Yogananda did it many, many times and his close
Oh, yes.
disciples. And we are fearful of getting to that stage because we don't know what's on the other side. And I have friends who went into breath work, and at one point they had such huge energy through their body, going through their body,
Right.
that they stopped the energy, they blocked the energy at certain level along the spine because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them next. So I think this is one of the fears, not necessarily fears of death. That's, I think it's universal on most of us, but fear of what are we going to experience if we really step forward on a spiritual path and we have a constant practice of breath work and yoga, and as you said, mainly breath more than asanas.
Well, one of the things Swamiji said, and actually Father De Mello as well, and I think some of the gurus back this, is that we're not afraid there's no fear of the unknown. So I wanted to say that first. because it's impossible to be afraid of something you don't know. What we're afraid of is leaving the known. And because we know what we know is what we know, and we're comfortable with that. Even if it's suffering, we're comfortable with that. So we're afraid of actually leaving the known. Because when the unknown, think about this. When you go on a vacation, you have not gone to a country before, you land in the country and you're just, you don't even know where the time is going. You're enjoying going through immigration. You enjoy getting your taxi. You're looking at a new place. That's the unknown. It's the known we are afraid of. It's the known. Because even when people think of the same vacation when they're leaving, oh, I have to lock up the house. Oh, if I don't do this, I got to make sure the neighbors pick up the mail. You see, the known, they're afraid of what they're leaving behind. But when they're going on their vacation, when you go anywhere new, 9 out of 10 times, most people would be, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. The time is going, they're looking at new things. They don't even have time to judge what they're looking at. So it's the known we're afraid of leaving behind, really. So yeah, so it's not going into the samadhi, it's leaving before. So with my yoga, with the Kriya Yoga, yes, that's what we were talking about. The Kriya Yoga, the guru was extremely strict, and so when he did that, I said, oh my gosh, I said, okay. After that experience, I said, you got me. I'm going to experiment with this. And he was kind enough to show me many things that to date I have not seen anywhere on the internet or in any book, actually. So I feel very blessed for that. And I've now been teaching it, showing people, because I actually teach it in regards to mental health. Because one of the things with Kriya Yoga is it brings out that mental state. And you better be ready to face that mental state. And literally, you have to face that opposite. Literally. Yes. So, for example, you bring up the thoughts. And I had mentioned this before, that the thoughts, now we take Newton's law, science, straight up. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Notice the words here, equal and opposite. It has to be equal and opposite. So every single thing in this universe is working on this premise. So look at your thoughts. When you have a thought come into your gross mind, so let's say we have a thought come in, oh my gosh, she's so arrogant. So I'm teaching people now, when you hear this gross thought, you've heard it, don't bring it out to your mouth yet. What is the opposite of that thought? What's the direct opposite? It could be, oh my gosh, she's so polite. So I said, bring in both thoughts, because now when you bring in both, they're not even in you. You're actually, it's almost like you're looking at them. So when you bring in both thoughts and you actually look at those thoughts, then I take it one step up and put it in the I. I am arrogant. I am polite. And you just keep saying that, because you'll feel an energy in you. And until that energy neutralizes, you keep saying it, feeling it. And once it neutralizes, then the two have become one. And 10 out of 10, you will never see another arrogant person again. You will not make a comment on it again. The only reason we comment on things is because we're hiding ourselves. What yes, we don't want to see. You know, humans, even in married life, I observe this and people doubt me. Your partner will only make you aware of what they want you to be aware of. And you also do that to your partner. Everybody does it. Yes. There's no such thing as this soulmates.
So can we apply this principle to religion? Instead of I sinned and I'm going to be punished by God, can we say I did something wrong and I know that is wrong? Either I lied or cheated or I stole money or goods. So is that reaction from the universe who is going to hit us back equally to remind us not to do it again? Is that a fair statement?
No, not at all, because the universe will not hit back, because number one, there's no such thing as right and wrong. This is you see, We live in a world of duality. Words came into being for us to communicate to each other. Suddenly, we decided to use these words to identify. We identify with these words and we start making judgments with these words. The universe works for the highest good.
Correct.
The universe does not give us suffering. We suffer ourselves because we don't know who we are. And I think it was Deepak Chopra who had said, we are divine beings having a human experience.
Yeah.
So let's look at Einstein's theory. Energy equals to, what was it, mc squared, right?
Yes.
Matter and speed of light. So right away, we know this energy is descending upon us and it's becoming two. And we get the human part of the being, right? So as we're going through life, when we're growing up, we get programmed to certain behaviors. And where did we get this good and bad, this reward and punishment from? The people we grew up with. God is going to punish you. God is this, God is that. And let me tell you, I've told this to many people. I'm a mother of 4 children. And the day any of my children have to go on their knees and beg me for anything, I'm a sham of a parent. And I don't think that is what Jesus Christ propagated. I don't think that's what Muhammad said. And definitely the Indians did not say it. So I think this whole good and bad came from probably a very old concept in, I don't know, maybe Christianity or something, I don't know. But there's no such thing as good and bad. When we are programmed as children, then certain experiences happen to us. Experiences. And each and every one of those experiences, I guarantee you, will grow you and expand your consciousness. Because at the end of the day, we didn't come here to be a talk show host or an accountant. We came here to evolve. Every single thing on this planet here is evolving. And our first and foremost job to ourselves is to make sure our evolution is going accordingly. Okay? This concept of good and bad, again, this is a man-made concept because at the end of the day, we are still one energy coming into two, and to get that light, we still need positive and negative. How the heck, as we hear this all the time, how do you know you're in love if you don't know what hate is? How do you know that? It is impossible to know it. And if you are, you say, because many of my past clients, we have this good little boy and good little girl, bad boy, and these things really affect people. I mean, I was one of them that it really affected as well. If you're constantly hearing you're a bad boy, then yes, what are you programming this child to do? This child is going to be either a rebel or he's going to be a pleaser. But neither one is good because now he's no longer who he came to be. We don't know who this child is. Many parents, I saw this on, I'm not on social media a lot, but I see this on Instagram. They actually are dressing their children identical to them. Now, can you see why depression is still around? Because we have these unaware parents who have now given their identity to the child. So the child can't even have an identity now. So this is what's happening in modern day. So there's no such thing as good and bad. It's the experience. And I guarantee you, in fact, one yogi said to me, he says, the best way to enlightenment? He said, suffer till you yourself get fed up of the suffering, and then you will go. That's what he said to me. And I actually took him up on that. Suffer, go right into that suffering until you yourself decide you're fed up of it. Right? So the suffering comes with such a gift for us because we talk about good and bad and happiness and sad, but in happiness, when you're in happiness, you don't expand consciously, spiritually, as you would when you're suffering, because suffering brings you to a humbleness and a gratitude and an understanding of your fellow man. Something
Yes.
happiness really does not really account to. So, and the other thing I was thinking about that it came to my mind, it's the newest thing now is everybody, when they're pregnant now, they like to find out what they're having. And I look at this and I think, oh my God, this poor being, he or she hasn't reached yet, and they've already decided the name. They've already decided. So now, as the mother is pregnant, she's already molding that child there. You know, the Bible said, beware the sins of the parent. They actually meant, I actually feel this, they meant beware the programming of the parent. Beware of the programming. And we all do it, because if you read my book, you will know I was not the best mom. I was not the best version of a mom that I could have been. But as you grow and learn, you realize you grow, you do differently. As you learn, you do differently. And we all need to be patient with each other to do that. But we really have to stop stealing our children's identity, because this program, we hear so much about childhood programming, and yet it's happening right before our eyes, full on. We're seeing, sometimes I look at these children on the internet they're dressed like their parents, and you look in that child's eyes and there's complete sadness. And I wonder how the parent could not see that. And they're, oh, she's so happy because we bought the same dress. And I'm looking at the child, because I know when I was a child, there was no way I wanted to wear the same dress as my mom. There was no way. So I don't know where society has actually gone mad. They're going mad. We need to come back to a place of individuality, focus on ourselves. Why am I doing this? What is prompting me to think this way? What is the understanding of this? These are the self questions that we need to ask ourselves. What is the gift in this experience? What am I supposed to learn from this experience? What is this energy arising in me? Not, oh my God, I feel bad. I got a hole in it. Oh, grab me a glass of wine, quick. I need to smoke. I need to smoke. I'm feeling really anxious. No, none of that anymore. There's nothing on the outside, I will tell you, that will do anything for your inside. You have to bring the inside out. Now, with the smoking, I have to say, though, I do endorse marijuana. I do endorse psilocybin, and I do endorse ayahuasca. And the reason for this is that when you go through a very traumatic experience, it hardens you. It hardens you to the world. And sometimes, and in the case with marijuana in particular, sometimes we need to soften the mind a bit in order to hear what that inner voice is trying to tell us, that little child within us is trying to tell us. You see? So this is why for some people, when you have some certain traumas, I says, yes, you know what? Soften the mind a bit. Because sometimes you have to let that little bit of light in. You can't just sit with a person and have them just on the logic. You got to bring them in here. What are you actually feeling? When was the first time you felt like that? And then after a while, after looking back at the past for a few, I would say sometimes we look back at the past, and then comes a time when you say, okay, now we've picked apart the past. We cannot possibly take it apart completely, but now let's cover the sore up, let's cover the scar, and let's allow it to heal now. Let's not pick it apart anymore. Let's close the door on it and let it give it that time to heal. So there's a certain amount of picking apart you're going to have to do, but then there comes a time when you say, okay, now I'm going to let that heal. I'm going to let it go. But you can't tell a person to let something go if in fact it's just sitting there. You have to work through it.
Yeah.
No?
How was your experience with ayahuasca, and where did you do it?
I did it in Peru with a very good shaman down there. And my experience with that was highly, it was so unusual. The first night, because we had to do three nights in succession. So the first night, I did not think any human can cry that much. And I could hear the shaman yelling at me, you think spirituality is easy? You have to suck it up. stop crying, face it, you're a warrior, you came here to be a warrior. And he's yelling at me and I'm bawling my eyes out. And then by the next night, but the next morning though, because you have to do it at night, um, it was like this emptiness. It was completely empty. It was like you could knock here and you can hear like this hollow going down the whole body. So the next night, then I was very, very moved. I saw this Shiva uh, symbol that I didn't know it was until after the fact. I wrote it down and I looked it up. And I saw an image of Shiva. And there was a lot of symbols that didn't make sense. And then the shaman actually explained, he said, sometimes when we do this, we're showing symbols that are above us. But as we start spiritually expanding, you're consciously expanding, those symbols start to mean something. And he was so true, because on the oddest moments, I see something and it's like, oh my gosh, that was goes back to then. But the particular thing about this ayahuasca, I had saw myself very weak and with a leaf in my mouth on this mountain. And then 2 years later, I think it was, I actually, when I met my Kriya Yoga guru, there's this mountain in Chennai called Arunachala. So he was challenging me one day, and he says, you want spirituality? He says, go climb Arunachala. I said, oh yes, tell me where it is. But not expecting anything, right? And he says, well, here's the guy. You're going into Chennai. He says, you climb it. And I says, I will show you I can do it. So I go to Chennai now, and I'm at the Radisson, and I tell the guy, the guy who was helping me, I said, can you call this guy, this man on this thing, and tell him I want to climb this mountain, but tell him I want to do it tomorrow morning. Because now I'm thinking he'll never have time. It's because it's 3 p.m, right? He's never going to be ready for tomorrow morning. It's a 3-hour drive to the place. The guy comes back, he says, ma'am, he says he will be waiting for you at 5 a.m. And I was like, oh my God, no. So anyway, I trucked it out at Radisson, left Radisson at 1 o'clock in the morning with the driver, and we drove all the way to climb the mountain. And this was it took us 4.5 hours to get up. It was 2,700 feet. It was only when I got on top of that mountain, I was almost fainting from the heat. And the guide, he grabbed some leaves. This whole mountain is just full of these medicinal leaves. And he put it in my mouth. And as I was reviving, then I remembered the ayahuasca the 2 years earlier and the same scene. So it's ayahuasca, and it's very healing because you get to the source. But I got to tell you, Claudiu, that source of pain that we hide, it is so frightening that had it not been for ayahuasca and psilocybin, I would not have been able to conquer it. I will honestly say that, because it is a fear that it is inexplainable, where this fear it is like a ball there. So when they talk about peeling the onions, I will tell you, when you get to that core, be prepared. Because my guru used to say, he said, the spiritual path is not for the weak-minded. He said, don't think, he told me, you people live in the Western world, you think, what is spirituality, that you pray and you're happy and smiling? No, I will show you what spirituality is. I will show you what spiritual expansion is. And indeed, it is a touch of one's core. And when you touch that core, you are almost weak to your own self. I remember the day I fell to my knees, and it was the tears and the fear and the sweating. It was like I thought I was going to melt like butter on a hot day. So you see, when you take it apart, when you go on these spiritual journeys, it is a journey into a vast cosmos. It is not a journey just through a fantasy land. It's a vast cosmos. And if we continue with this fantasy, as a lot of people are doing now, you're not going to get anywhere. It's just going to be fantasy. At some point in time, you got to face yourself. And my advice is, don't wait when you're on your dying bed to face yourself, because that's too much. face it little by little. So when you're on your dying bed, you can say, okay, I faced it. I'm free to go.
Yeah.
You see? So don't wait till the ending just to say, okay, now everything's coming at me. And I think this is why reincarnation happens, because I think people are dying in fear. They're coming back so quickly in fear. Like it's because now we're, this fear that people have of death and getting old. It's it's uh, it's unnatural. It's unnatural that we are trying to still dress. We have parents still trying to dress like their teenage children.
Yeah.
When I stopped dyeing my hair, I said to myself, I said, who the heck am I fooling now? Can they not see from my daughter that I'm an older person? You know,
Yes.
because when we accept, if you cannot accept yourself even on the physical, then you have to go inward and find out why. If
Yes.
you cannot walk out there without your makeup, then you got to know why. Why do you feel you have to set yourself up for the world every day? Why aren't
Yeah.
you setting yourself up for yourself? Because, Claudio, I'm telling you, nobody is required to love you, not your mother, your father, your children, your lover, your wife, your husband. Nobody's required to love you. The only person required to love you is you.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
If you're going to set yourself up for yourself. Because
Yeah, we
again,
live too much by social circumstances and what people around us will think about us. And in fact, I just sent out my newsletter for January, and I mentioned to everyone, guys, stop living someone else's life. Be
yes,
yourself. Doesn't matter what other things about you. This is your experience in this lifetime. Just live it the way you want, and forget
and
about
there's
anyone else.
and there's no shame in your life experience, because, like my book, life happens to us. There's no shame in your life experience. I
Yes.
mean, you look at me here, like you can see, I'm a solid, I'm an Indian woman. Do you know when I went to India, they actually refused me entry to one of the temples because they said I wasn't Indian. They they said the lady said to me, "You're one of those Christian people," she says. And I actually had to go to the police station. I wrote about it in my book to get to go into the temple, and they wouldn't allow me in. And again, we have to stop looking at this image. Image has become too much. We can't. And the thing with Kriya Yoga is, believe it or not, you will look. Maybe I don't, but I have to tell you, people who I know do Kriya Yoga, they look so much younger. They look so much younger.
Yes, no one will guess my age. I can tell you that. I haven't been practicing for long, maybe 4 or 5 years, but
Uh-huh.
very few people. I mean, those who don't know me, they can guess my age. So that's very rewarding.
So when you're off camera, then you'll tell me the age. Yes, it makes you younger and healthier. Now, Kriya Yoga, though, I have to caution this, because you have to do it properly, because you can damage your heart and so on. Because and you have to do it according to how they're teaching it. You have to start slow. Because if you've never breathed it and then you suddenly start, huffing and puffing, it could cost. You want to, and it's not a fad. I want to make this clear. Kriya Yoga is a lifestyle choice to say, I'm going to put attention on my breath, because now I realize that this breath, and I teach people that this breath you're feeling, what you feel within that breath is life. So what you're feeling is carrying that life, bringing it into you, taking it out of you. And the only reason we're suffering is because ever so often we identify with one of those breaths that come in when we should actually release it. So it must be done properly. It must be done where you're going to take your time to say, make that choice that I am going to breathe, because we think we're breathing, but we're not. So you have to make a choice that I'm going to breathe. And how am I going to breathe? I'm going to breathe so I have the frequency. Like Einstein said, the frequency, the energy has to be in a frequency. I think Tesla has a quote on that. Frequency, vibration, and energy, or something, he says. Yes. So the frequency, so the key to this Kriya Yoga is to go with the life frequency. You're breathing with the frequency.
Yeah, and to activate the energy centers along the spine. And, yes. And all the new breath work, which came out in the last, 5 to 7 years, I think they all have their roots into Kriya Yoga.
Oh, definitely,
All this
definitely.
technique which was brought forward by Babaji and Lahiri Mahashaya and
Correct. Now, the Hatha Yoga has breathing too, and Raj Yoga, because Gandhi actually practiced Raj, and my grandfather did Raj Yoga as well. It is a very strict form of yoga. It is also the Kriya, but very strict in what you're going to eat and all this. So same thing, but a very strict form of yoga. So I caution people to not don't take it as a fad. Number one, it's not a fad, and like you said, it's been around 7 years, which it's been around for centuries. I remember trying to teach Kriya Yoga before it came to Canada, and people didn't want to learn. They wanted to learn how to make themselves in a pretzel. They wanted to be the Hatha Yoga. And Hatha Yoga actually focuses on breath also. But this is not what the Western is doing. This is not what we're seeing happening. We're seeing too much focus. And when you focus on posture, guess what happens? Posture is part of the manifested body. So you are developing ego, spiritual ego. When you focus only on posture, because the body is three aspects: mental, physical, spiritual. And it's written, if you get two in balance, the third will follow. And the easiest one to get into balance is the pranayama, the spiritual. So if you can get two of those in balance, the third will follow. And that is absolutely true. I've experimented with that. It was absolutely true. You only have to get two in balance, the third follows. But with the Hatha Yoga, the way it's being taught, the focus is too much on the physical body. Because we must remember yoga, Kriya Yoga, meditation, these are all spiritual practices. When it first came to Toronto, and yoga was being taught, they actually did not tell people it was a spiritual practice when it first came. They didn't want people to know it was a spiritual practice. And the irony of that is when we came to Toronto in 1967, it was so racist. My mom couldn't even wear her sari on the street without someone, heckling her. And today now to see the turnaround, I'm glad she lived to see that actually, that times changed. We have to really recognize that it's a spiritual practice. Because when you recognize that it's a spiritual practice, then the tendency to take it for granted is a lot less.
Yes. And that time when you tried the ayahuasca in Peru, that was the only time, or you kept maintaining a habit to clear more of your trauma?
No, because when you go in to clear something, when I go in, I actually go with the universe, let thy be done. You're in charge. I cannot pick. I am suffering too much to pick which one I want you to heal. So you pick for me so that the rest will domino effect. And that was the one time I did the ayahuasca, and that's all I needed actually. And then a couple of years later was when I tried the psilocybin, and that took me to that next level. And then after that, then it was home stretch. And I was surprised because I have an acupuncturist in Toronto, and he was telling me that in China they actually do use psilocybin for PTSD. In China, they've been doing it for years.
They are doing some trial tests in US right now. I interviewed Dennis McKenna, who is part of the Hefner Institute. So they are doing this type of trials with especially army people, like soldiers who came from front lines, and they want to be taken out of drugs and like chemical drugs. And this type of plant medicine can heal them in a matter of like 2 or 3 sessions. So they are doing this legally.
And a lot of the PTSD, see, a childhood trauma, 0 to 13. After 13, really, whatever happens after 13 is just amplified from that trauma. And I actually, with PTSD, having to go through it myself, I actually did have a soldier ones that came back from Iraq. And this was the interesting thing, because my theory is that nothing in Iraq can give you such trauma at an adult age unless something already happened as a young person, as a child. And he went to several people, and when he came to me, I says, look, you know, you can trust me. I have no credentials on this, but give me an opportunity. And I actually proved that theory with him, because I said, you went to Iraq, you knew what you were expecting, you knew what was going to happen, blah, 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 blah. But now you keep getting these dreams all the time, right? And you have PTSD now. I said, but I challenged that this is coming from the childhood, and it was just got amplified. And I took him back with a vision and hypnosis, exactly that. And he went home and he called me and he said he's never felt so good. Because we have to stop treating this logic that we're seeing in front of us and start treating what's hiding in the subconscious. You've got to make that connection between conscious and subconscious. Actions must match your words. When your actions don't match your words, suffering happens. This disease happens. So when you have to, when somebody's telling you, you know, I'm feeling traumatized because this happened last week, and they're 30 years old, then you have to say, okay, well, that happened last week, but something must have happened before for that last week to be so bad.
Yes, to trigger it. Yeah.
So I really, you know, I've been able to help a lot of people with the PTSD because more of us have it than we realize. And I challenge anyone who has been disciplined as a child, who has been spanked as a child, that yes, you've got PTSD. Because in the islands here, I did a seminar in St. Vincent, and there was about 10 people in the room. And there was not a person there that did not have PTSD because they were beaten very badly as children. What they got here is what we would, this day and age, people get locked up for that kind of stuff. And I've actually have clients who said they were deserving of being beat. Most of them have children, so I challenge them. I said, okay, well, I want you to take your daughter now, put her in front of your father now, and if he beats her, what would you do? She says, no, I wouldn't allow it. I said, well, why not? You allow it to yourself. You think it was okay for you? You see this reality, we have to bring an awareness to this. So PTSD is in more people than anyone cares to admit.
Yes, and sometimes it's buried deep down and we are not even aware of it. We have some symptoms, we don't know how to qualify them. And exactly. You are right. I mean, any type of plant medicine can bring them up and, you know, release them, and will make us acknowledge them, and we can move forward through forgiveness, gratitude, love. Yeah. And
forgiveness, I tell people, don't force yourself to forgive anybody, because if you're forcing yourself to forgive anybody, it's just like in India, where we call Seva, donation services. I tell people, don't force yourself to do it, because you're going to do it with the wrong energy. You're going to do it in the wrong. Forgiveness has to come to a place when you come to a balance within yourself, and you can see also yourself. Then you can come to a forgiveness. And when you recognize that the very parents that you try not to be like, you ended up becoming. Everyone who has tried not to be like their parent became their parent. And we can't miss it. It's a programming. It's literally a programming that's put into us. And it takes, it's in such an in-ground programming, and some people it's destroyed their lives, quite frankly. Right? And then there's some of us who says, no. I don't want to be like my mom. I love her very much, but who am I? Who would I be? And I challenge people, you know, who would you be right now if you didn't have any parents and you just grew up on your own? Who would you be right now?
That's a
If you
big
grew
challenge.
up in, yes, if just imagine, and in fact, I say it, I have a girl that this is the other day. I said, when you go to do something with your kid, ask yourself, who would do this, mom or dad? Who would do this, mom or dad? And the moment you have an answer, then you says, okay, how would I do it if I didn't have mom and dad? And I did that just recently with my teenage daughter. I was sending her a text, and the tone of the text, I could feel my heart was getting heavy. And I looked at the text and I said, who would write such a text like this? And the moment I saw, then I says, how would Ashta write this? And I wrote the text. And my daughter, she right away, we have so much love flowing because it was because I hadn't heard from her in a while. And I says, you're not calling me. So at first it's so quick, eh? And as I'm typing, I can feel it. I says, wait a minute, this energy has changed. I am not writing to this child. I'm attacking this child. So who would have done this? And then I said, but then I said, okay, so now I know who would have done this. I said, well, how would I do it had I not had any influence? How would I write? And that's what we must ask ourselves in those moments. If I had no outside influence whatsoever, what would I do right now in this very moment? How would I treat this person if I had no outside influence, no judgment whatsoever on this person?
Yeah, so true.
Because right now we have the word narcissist going around a lot all over. I myself use it as well. It's not a good thing to be with someone that has it. It's not a good thing to have. But when I see all the stuff on the internet about narcissism, and when you think, what is a narcissist? It's a person whose experience has hardened them to life, to the sensitivity of life. Now, when you have that kind of definition, how can you hate that person? How can you point fingers? How could you not want to help? Yes, I'm not going to live with you anymore because it's hurting me, but I can see that you're a person and you're in pain. Because nobody wakes up in the morning and decides they're going to be they're going to be mean. I mean, as a mom with 4 kids, I remember waking up, my first 2 children. I was not the best mother. I was such an unaware person. But yet, as unaware as I was aware that I wasn't doing my best. And each morning I would say, today will be that day that I will make it through the entire day. And at that time, I didn't know I had PTSD. And I would say without snapping, without falling apart. So but then it would happen. And rightly so, it kept happening because what did the universe want to show me? Sweetheart, you have PTSD. This is something serious. You have to take care of it. And you know what's laughable about that? I remember I said I went to psychologists and psychiatrists first. Well, I actually, a couple of years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I requisitioned my hospital records because of curiosity. I wanted to see, because I thought, how could no one not have seen I had PTSD? How could no one? It was just such a textbook case. And I was reading the doctor's report, and he actually wrote on the report, he said, she comes in and all she talks about is her sister who committed suicide. And that's what he wrote, all she talks about. But never once did he realize, well, it's called ruminating. Now we know, right? It's called
Yeah.
ruminating. But so this is why I think I really feel psychiatrists and psychologists, they really need to take a step back into themselves. They need to also do some of these self-help retreats because they have done a lot of harm. And I actually feel if you're with a psychiatrist more than a year and you're not feeling a difference, you need to find somebody else. I just recently heard of someone who's been with the same psychiatrist for 10 years. And I think even as a professional, he should be the one saying, ma'am, you need to go. Because even as I teach people, I tell them, if you haven't learned anything from me after 6 months, maybe you need somebody else, because by 6 months, you should be at least breathing, knowing the mantra for breathing, at least knowing your mantra. Right?
Yes. Yeah. How
So,
do you help your clients as an empath?
Well, that's it. I have an ability that the moment someone sits in front of me, I know exactly what's going on with them, everything to the T. And I've been able to tell people things about themselves that they uh, had hidden from the world. But the upside to that is that we're able to get through healing very quickly, because what would take a person 3 months to dig out, within a few questions, I can get them to bring it out. The downside to that is I don't have a lot of friends, because people think I read their mind. And I have to tell you, Claudiu, my personal life with my own experimentation with yoga, I don't want to hear anybody else's problem. I had enough of my own. So and again, the downside to that too is sometimes I will be sitting with people, and something would just come out, like it just comes out, and they would look at me and say, well, how did you know that? I never told you that. And I said, oh my, I'm sorry, I don't even know where that came from. And that's the honest to God truth. Um, it's a feeling that it's almost like when someone sits in front of me in the space of 2 to 3 minutes, not even, it's almost as if I'm in their body and I lived that experience. And at first I didn't like it. Um, Still sometimes because sometimes I can come home and really cry for a person, because, and this is the thing with love, too, but I'll get to that in a moment. So to tune into a person to that level, and I think that's what psychology and psychiatry needs to do, because when you tune into them, they feel heard. They feel like somebody understands what they can't say in words. When I say it to them, then they're like, finally somebody understands. Finally, how I was been waiting years to say that. I didn't know how to bring that out. On my website, I have a list of feelings so that people could go and identify feelings.
Yeah, but see, the difference between you and a psychiatrist is that you don't need a diploma to connect with that person and tell them exactly what's going on with them. For you is not a job. For you is a calling. For them is a job. This is what they think they were meant to do. They think they were meant to do, but they don't have that connection. They just read from a book or look at symptoms, the same like any doctor. You cough, okay, you take this pill. You have a headache, you take this pill.
Yes.
But there is no other connection between, as you said, mind, spirit, body, and everything else as a
and we have the three aspects. We have to connect it. We have to, and this concept of love. People think this love is like in the Cinderella or you're walking through the forest and the birds are tweeting around your head. No, love, Claudiu, is when you can sit next to a client and cry with them. Love is when you can walk on the street and feel another person's pain. Love is when you go to a funeral and you're crying your eyes out. It's because you love the person and you know you're not going to see them again. So we have to see that we're beings of love. Love is not an emotion. It's not an emotion. It's a state of being. It's a state that you can look in that person, and in that moment, sometimes they may need to be yelled at in that moment. We don't know, because you see, they think in India, the yogis themselves will get fed up and they will chase you when you ask them questions. They will say, go away, I have my own problems. In fact, they have a story with Swami Vivekananda when a man kept challenging him, and he kept telling the man, don't challenge, it's okay, don't challenge. And finally, he grabbed him by the collar and he held him up. So, it is not that being spiritual or something, this love means it's not about taking sides. It's about doing the right thing in that moment, what's meant in that moment. And if you're tuned into the moment, you will know what to do without any thoughts going through your head, without anything. You will know what to do. And the universe unfolds before you to support you. Because many, many times I will tell you, Claudio, I would tell clients, I had this vision. Perhaps you shouldn't do this, because sometimes when I have a vision, if I can see that if that person makes a change it will be for them. But if I can see that it's their destiny, I don't even tell them the vision. Because if it's your destiny, I'm not going to even want to tell you. But do you know how many people I says, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should do it this way. And they'll say, no, 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 no. And they will come to me and ask me for my opinion, and I will give them, no, no, no. And they go, because humans, Shri Ravi Shankar, I think it was said that humans do not have the capacity to go towards what their happiness. They go towards their suffering.
Mm-hmm.
This is the mystery, one of the mysteries of life. And this is also, we have to remember the unknown. The unknown is a mystery in life. And we must also respect the secret of the unknown. Just like when you have a secret and you tell your friend and you says, you know what, this is a secret, please don't tell anybody. It's just so there's a section of life here. There's a section of the universe that is mysterious. And we must just respect it. And one day, if it chooses to reveal to us, then we say, thank you for telling us your secret. But until then, we must respect the confidence of the universe and be grateful for what we have learned. But we must also be aware that what we learned is only limited to our perception and our state in that moment.
Correct.
This is why wisdom is vast. Because there's always, in India, they say Gyan Yoga is the only yoga that will send a man crazy. And I can see why, because the moment you learn something, believe it or not, that becomes obsolete the next day when something else descends upon you. Sometimes I go to write my quotes and I write them, and then something else comes. Oh, this quote this is not applicable anymore. Now I have to go with this one. So this is the vastness of wisdom that is blessed to each and every one of us, if we choose to take it. Now, a lot of people feel this push-pull to do this because there's a difference between self-discipline and enforced discipline. We grew up with enforced discipline. This is why sometimes when we go to exercise, we feel, oh, I don't want to do it, because we feel like we're forcing ourselves. Self-discipline will get you to where you need to be. Enforced discipline you will fail each time when you try to enforce it, right? You only make a rebel or pleaser out of yourself or your child. So understand the difference between self-discipline and enforced discipline so you can see how the self-discipline will move you forward. But we get rid of the programming, understand the programming of the enforced discipline. Because many times it's because of this enforced discipline that we get stuck. Now, the other thing with exercising, people go out, we know this, they start exercising, and in the first 2 weeks, they lose 10 pounds, they're happy. But then the third week, what happens? It slows down. Guess why? Because now it's your mental state, your mental weight needs to be looked at. Any form of exercise you do, it will fall back on these three aspects of you. So when you see you're exercising physically and it slows down, be sure to know that is your mental state now ready to be looked at. And when that mental state is looked at, then it's not about gaining weight or losing weight. It's about the body comes back to where it's supposed to be. Now, can you accept where it's supposed to be? So now we have to look at that expectation. We have to drop the expectation that we have put on ourselves. Because quite frankly, whatever you put in your mouth to eat, if your state of mind is that is healthy for you, it will be healthy for you. Because they have some of the yogis in India, they take from the left path where they actually would eat the feces and so on, because to them, it is no different from a baked chicken. Right? It's very easy.
Yeah,
So
it's all point of
it's
view and
very
mentality,
vast.
and yes, yeah, it's very different.
Very vast.
Yeah.
Very vast.
How do you help your clients? What are the services you are offering to help people in need?
I do intuitive awareness counseling, and I actually combine hypnotherapy. Well, actually, it's yoga nidra with the Kriya. Because first of all, when they come in, I get them breathing first. Let's do some Kriya. They don't know they're doing Kriya, but we breathe. Then we sit for the session. But what I do is I have a writing board, like a blackboard. So when we hit I say, okay, tell me 3 things you don't like about somebody, whatever it is. So let's start with what you don't like, because this is what's nagging you. And from that place of what you don't like, you can come back now down to what is actually bothering them. Because usually what's bothering you, it's a disease in the body. The body is not at ease because something in there is contradictory. It's contradicting, it's a push-pull. So when we do this, then I also use visioning. Visioning is very powerful, but it's more so powerful when you do it with Yoga Nidra, because then you can, at the end of Yoga Nidra, you can make a commitment. Hypnosis on its own will not work. I feel hypnosis combined with intuitive awareness, because intuitive awareness is what will move you from your state. It is what is transformational. Hypnosis on its own will only last, a couple months. But when you combine it and then you give the client to take home the homework, this is the breathing to do. This is what I want you to reflect on. And these are the questions I want you to answer. Then come back and tell me after that. And it's very, I don't know quite how I do it, but I'm able to, you see, I look at their mind and you can see their mind, it's almost fragmented. So I think of it as a puzzle, and all I have to do is get some of those pieces in place, and then you can put the rest in. It's like a mom helping a child. The child struggles in the beginning, and you put a couple of pieces in there, and then suddenly the child has got the whole puzzle going. And the biggest thing for people in my business is loving their inner self, their inner child. You would not believe how many people, it's like they're child abusers. Do you know how many child abusers we have walking around? Literally have that inner child part of them in a cage. Because guess what? They don't want to know they're stupid. They don't want to know they wet the bed when they were small. They don't want to know they were yelled at and called greedy. So, and now they hate this child, this persona child that they perceive caused all the problems. But meanwhile, that is you. That still is you, but they sort of separated themselves. But you have to bring the child back in, because the child is the ego. It is the hurt part. And I tell people, don't get rid of the ego. That is impossible, because our manifested form, to be a human being, to have a manifested form, you have to have ego. But what you can do, and look at it this way, if somebody's hurting, do we try to get rid of them or puts them to the side? Or is it better to bring them into the embrace and says, okay, help me to understand you. Why do you feel greedy? Why do you feel you need attention all the time? Why? Question yourself. And again, it comes back to a full circle where one day you say, there's no more questions. So there's who am I? It comes, you drop the and the I, and then you're sitting with who, and then you're sitting in no man's land.
Yes. Ashta-deb, we are approaching the end of our interview. Any final thoughts?
Well, yes, I want to really get it out there to people to please take the pressure off yourself. We have so many people committing suicide now because of this extreme pressure. We have put this expectation on ourselves to be a certain way, speak a certain way, look a certain way, eat a certain way, exercise a certain way. Stop being so rigid and uncompromising with yourself. Nobody likes that. Think of a child. If you were a child, picture yourself as a child. Would you want to be in such a rigid, uncompromising place? How about cutting yourself some slack? How about showing yourself love? Because many people will get up in the morning and go to work, and they're asking people, how are you? How are you today? And they have not looked themselves in the mirror. First thing you get up in the morning, you look at yourself and say, how are you today? And I love you. And how was your weekend? Look in the mirror and talk to yourself first. Don't go out like a hypocrite when you have just been so cold to yourself. You've probably not even given your body breakfast, or you've probably put it through some rigorous yoga. How about looking at your body now and saying, hey, come on, let's cut each other some slack?
Yeah.
Because the ego, the Bhagavad Gita says that ego, don't ever try to fight it, because it is the strongest energy and it'll conquer you. And I've seen it happen to people. You have to understand. Always ask, what is the understanding of this moment? What is the understanding? Actually, Swamiji Paramhansa, that was his thing. He always say, what is the understanding of this? No other question was required, but what is the understanding?
Yeah, such a
I've taken
wonderful
much of your
advice.
time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And for my viewers, thank you for watching. Please share it, like it. It's important to give a thumb up. It will go up in the rates, the video, the interview. Also, you can support me at patreon.com/Claudiu Murgan. Until next time, love and gratitude.